Inbou no Wakusei Shancara is a board game. I know it won't look like one, but it really is a board game. They just happen to hide all of the board bits from you. I'd say Shancara was based on two board games that were popular with the nerdier set in the 1980s. Dune and Junta. From Dune, which is based on what you think it's based on, Shancara pulls a lot of its setting, the idea of asymmetrical factions with shifting alliances, and resource gathering whose effectiveness is changed by the weather. And from Junta, Shancara draws the civil wars, assassination attempts, and the need to expose yourself to periodic risk for the sake of being able to perform certain actions. There's a few other influences that I can spot as well, but those are the two big obvious ones. The concept of the game is that the distant colony world of Shancara is a desert planet whose mineral resources are vital to the galaxy. The planet's been colonized by the Galactic Empire, and the original population isn't very happy about this. At the start of the game, you have to pick one of 4 characters to play as, each of whom changes how you play the game quite a bit. Galoa is from a wealthy family, and he starts the game in control of the most powerful faction. Alibab is the leader of the native population of Shancara, and he seeks coexistence with the outsiders. He starts the game with more money than anyone else due to controlling more of the mines. Borgia is a woman who owns the spaceport on Shancara. As such, she gets a cut of any imports and exports, and can shut down all trade if she wants. Minamoto is a war hero who lost significant parts of his body, and as such has become a cyborg. He has a personal military unit that's always under his control. Each of the 4 characters in 12 factions starts with control over a certain number of colonies, and to win, you have to control 17 of those. There are 2 ways to gain control over a colony. You can gain the favor of the faction that controls it, or you can conquer it, placing it under your personal control. As the game gets underway, everyone is assigned a certain role in government. There are 2 generals who get an army to assist them during civil wars, an Air Force commander who gets bombers that have some really variable damage, and the head of the palace guard, who can be used to make assassination attempts. These roles last until a player dies, at which point all of the roles are shuffled again. Then we get into the core loop of the game. First, a news report covering the weather, a special event, and the upcoming budget. The budget's unevenly divided among the 4 players, but as a rule of thumb, if you have more political power, then you get more money. And of course, events that occur in the news can affect who gets what money. The news is also important because it can give you a casus belli, and if you don't have one of those, you can't start a war. Then, all eligible players are granted an item. These are basically cards that have a huge variety of effects, but we can break them down to 3 broad categories. They get you money, they change influences with factions, or they can get you a military advantage. After being granted an item, you'll be given an opportunity to use an item. The ones that shift cash around can be used here. Then, everybody votes on the budget. A for yes, B for no. All of the factions that you control vote the way that you order them to. If the budget passes, everyone gets the amount of cash that they were told in the news report. If it fails, nobody gets any cash. Next, everyone collects some ore from their mines, and then Borgia has the choice to close down interstellar trade for that turn. Then we hit the meat of the game, the political influence phase. You can use an item to do this, or you can start bribing people. You can only take 3 actions during this phase, so you can't just dribble out small bribes until you get things the way you want them. Every 500 credits in a bribe that you give is a roll on a die to shift power around. Whoever comes up on the die will lose 1 power while you gain 1 power. Using an item can cause a much more dramatic shift in the power balance, swinging factions 8 or 9 points. The political factions are things like the Galactic Empire, miners, aliens, and of course, the general public. When using cards, they often represent taking a certain policy position, which will bring up support in some areas while driving it down in others. After everyone has realigned the politics of the planet, Then you can hire additional help. You can hire an assassin, a crazy assassin who may decide to kill you instead of your target, some mercenaries, or some freemen, or Shancara natives. Next, you have to choose what location you'll be at that turn. There's 4 general locations, including your mistress's place, but A and B are important locations. A is the spaceport, and if you go there, then you'll be able to trade your ore for money. And B is the shelter, where no one can get to you, but you can't give out any orders, and you won't get an item at the start of the next turn. Once everyone is in place, then it's time for assassination. And if you've hired an assassin, or have the palace guard, then you can pick another player, and pick a destination where they could try to pick them off. If they're there, then they die. Don't worry, they come right back. But they lose a significant amount of influence as a result of that. After the assassin's dirty deeds are done, you trade your ore for cash, assuming you're still alive. And then if you have a casus belli, you can start a war. And in the hour and a half that I played Shancara, nobody started a war. I can tell you that the wars are abstracted, all players can join in on any side, and you can choose to betray your allies, joining the other side. Some of the political factions will provide support during the war, adding units to you or providing special effects. And you can call off the war at any time at the cost of some of your money and ore. If someone sticks it out and loses, then they can be executed. And after the war, the commander of the winning side can choose to reward anyone who assisted them. Finally, you're given the opportunity to discard an item if for some reason you don't want what you have. And then the month advances, and it goes back to the news cycle. A useful thing to be aware of is that during certain phases, you can hit select to bring up a menu that will show you the status of everything in the game. It's really the only way to get an overview, and it's kind of annoying that it's not very accessible, only being available when you can take certain actions. Just don't hit start because that automatically passes what you're doing and goes on to the next phase. Shancara is a fairly rare game, and prices on it have been going up lately, though it hasn't quite cracked the 10,000 yen mark as far as I can tell. But it is getting close. It doesn't have a very good reputation in Japan as far as I can tell. People seem to like the theme, but not how it plays. I'm in a similar boat there, though probably for different reasons. Most of the people down on Shancara that I saw didn't like it because the game is slow, but for me it comes down to the game being a bit too swingy. In my game I was playing as Ali Bob and getting absolutely crushed. Bottom of the influence pile. But then I had a successful assassination, and a card that boosted my favorability to all factions, and suddenly I was number 1. The game is not especially well balanced, and heavily restricting civil wars prevents the military abilities from being really useful. Shancara is an interesting game. I like that they tried to do something different. I just also think that they weren't really successful at it.